Hi and welcome everyone. Finally, it's Norway's turn. My name is Nora Rosenberg Grobæk and I lead battery ecosystem activities with Innovation Norway, which is Norway's government's tool for business development in Norway and internationally. Those of you who have been following the entire Nordic Battery Thursday series know that on October 14th, we visited Finland and got a deep dive into what Finland has to offer in terms of the growing Nordic ecosystem for batteries. And on October 28th, we visited Sweden and got a good glimpse into what's happening within innovation and sustainability in Sweden and in the Nordics. This series is a collaboration between Innovation Norway, Business Finland and Business Sweden, initiated by InnoEnergy and the European Battery Alliance. InnoEnergy will wrap this series up on December 9th, but I'll remind you about that again later in the program. The goal of this webinar is to facilitate and showcase the Nordic strongholds and our place in the European ecosystem for batteries and electric mobility. We have seen electrification of the mining sector examples from Finland. We visited Northvolt in Sweden and smaller innovative companies such as Nordic and APR Technologies. And we have seen great examples on how cross-border collaboration can be an enabler to secure sustainability in the entire value chain for battery production. One example is Hydrovolt, a joint venture between Northvolt and Hydro. On the agenda today, we are so lucky that we have representatives from these companies present who will share some insights into this. It is this level of cooperation and co-creation that is one of the unique aspects of the Nordics and what we call the Nordic model. Our social welfare system, low hierarchies, and flexible work-life balance foster a high level of trust that enable us to harness innovation, even between competitors. Last week, I moderated a panel at the Nordic EV Summit, and I took away 3 key learnings that I know will be in focus with today's panelists. First, and very shortly, we need speed and scale. Secondly, we need to attract and develop the correct competence and talent and inspire the future generation, which leads me to the next and final point, which is sustainability and responsibility in the entire value chain. I know this is of great importance to the Nordics, and I'm excited to hear today's panelists and speakers. Today's moderator will be Stina Torjesen, Associate Professor from the University of Agder and representing the Batman Research Project. But first, I have the honor of welcoming the Norwegian Minister of Trade and Industry in Norway, Mr. Christian Vestre.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear everyone. As you probably know, transport accounts for around 1/5 of global CO2 emissions, with road transport responsible for the majority of these emissions. The transition to zero-emission road transport can therefore be a key contribution in reducing carbon emissions in line with the Paris Agreement. In Norway, a combination of various measures, both carrots and sticks, have brought about a speedy electrification of private cars and public transport vehicles. We have the highest market penetration of electric vehicles per capita in the world, and the majority of new cars sold in Norway are EVs. We are also well on our way in developing a green shipping industry. Due to strict requirements in public tenders, our coastal landscapes are now home to more than 70 battery-driven ferries, which constitutes about 1/3 of all Norwegian ferries. This development is the result of willed, favorable and solid policies. Now, Norway is a relatively small country with a small population. When the EV revolution really gains traction in other parts of the world, which it has to, we will need a lot of batteries. These batteries need to be produced in a sustainable manner, and this creates large business opportunities for both Norwegian and Nordic actors. These opportunities have not gone unnoticed in the market. There are several exciting initiatives in the pipeline across the entire battery value chain, from raw and active materials to recycling and reuse. Bergen-based Corvus Energy is a world leader in maritime energy solutions, and there are 3 initiatives for battery cell manufacturing here in Norway: Beyonder, FREYR and Morrow. By taking a lead in developing a green transport sector, we can contribute to global reductions of CO2 emissions as well as create new jobs and export in an industry where the demand will increase rapidly in the years to come. The Norwegian government therefore aims to support the establishment of large-scale battery production in Norway and the development of a complete value chain, including the production of raw materials, components, battery cells, and recycling. As a country, we have a strong basis to build on in this establishment of a new battery industry. Practically all our electricity is produced from renewable sources, mainly hydropower. We have a highly developed process industry, which is a global leader in climate efficiency. We also have a skilled, highly educated and highly adaptable workforce. However, we also recognize and acknowledge that we are not alone in our ambitions and goals for the future. The Nordic countries are all frontrunners in the green transition. The Nordics can also be a key player in ensuring that the transition to zero-emission transport happens in the most sustainable way, both socially and environmentally. Our countries are all well equipped to deliver on high ambitions and strict environmental demands. We have transparent, well-regulated industries with high social, ethical and environmental standards. We have good access to renewable energy, and we are home to important producers of many raw materials used in batteries. Together, the Nordic countries can build a sustainable battery industry together through the entire value chain, exploiting our comparative advantages for the common good, reduce CO2 emissions and create new jobs. As the Norwegian Minister of Industry and Trade, it's therefore a great pleasure for me to open this broadcast in the webinar series Nordic Battery Thursday. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Minister, for those encouraging words. It will be super exciting to follow up on some of these promises. So, future looks bright. So, moving on in the program, I would also like you to know that you can comment and ask questions in the chat. If they're not answered during the show, they will be answered after. I mentioned that our moderator today is Stina, and she will be live shortly with our first panel. But while they get settled in here on the digital stage, take a look at why Norway is leading in terms of electric mobility.
In Norway, electric cars have gone from a small niche to a mass movement. Today, sales of new cars are completely dominated by rechargeable cars. More than 50% of new cars sold are fully electric. Together with rechargeable hybrids, this amounts to 4 out of 5 new cars sold. But what does it take to promote the transition to ZEVs?
We have to continuously improve the charging infrastructure all over our country. It's crucial. Without fast charging stations all over the country and the availability of charging at home, we will not succeed.
Charging stations are a natural meeting place for electric car owners. Ingrid and John have had electric cars for 5 and 8 years, respectively. What was the main reason for choosing an electric car?
It's competitive on price, and it's also a greener option. And I think also it's fun to drive. Instead of fueling up my car at a gas station, I can actually do it at home. So that's nice. I think I save some time in that regard.
What I find the most challenging with owning an electrical vehicle is probably the charging infrastructure. And not only in Oslo with normal charging, but also if you're going to your cabin in the mountains or another city, you would rely on fast chargers, and there simply are not enough chargers as of today.
Battery solutions are one of the top priorities on the Norwegian agenda, as both companies and authorities believe this will be key to reaching ZEV goals.
Everybody wants to drive as green as possible. Producing batteries it demands a lot of energy. That energy should be zero emission or renewable. And Norway, therefore, is a very good place to produce batteries. We have several initiatives in Norway when it comes to battery cell factories at the moment. We have FREYR, Morrow, Beyonder, and the joint battery initiative between Equinor and Hydro.
Electric vehicles are becoming a familiar sight even in remote winter destinations. This is a result of intentional political priorities.
Norway is making a difference. countries around the world are visiting, are asking us questions and want to know how we do what we do. So Norway is showing the world that this can be done. And it can be done in a country far north with long distances, rugged mountains. And if Norway can do it, any country can do it.
Norway and the Nordics constitute a pilot area for electrification, and our advances are powered by digital innovation. In this first panel, we assess the drivers behind early electrification, and we explore the link between digital innovation and electrification. Keep in mind again that you can place questions in the chat function. So, Christina Bu, you are Secretary General of the Norwegian Electric Vehicle Association. What, from your organization's perspective, have been the key learnings from Norway's early electrification in the car sector?
Well, I think most importantly has been that Norway has been doing this for a long time without sort of stopping it or changing it. So we have had strong policies for a long time, even before the cars was really, really good. So today, the market share is 63% so far this year for fully electric cars, and most of the world is amazed. And I'm amazed myself, really, how quickly this has changed from a market share in 2012 of 3% to 63%. And the mindset of people has changed completely as well. They just see that this is the new normal, and it's anyone buy an EV now. And it's all because of strong politics, strong policies to promote EVs. And what is often misunderstood is how Norway has done it. We've done it with taxing cars that pollute a lot on the purchase, on the price tag, whereas EVs, full electric cars, are exempted taxes. So it's not really about subsidies, but about promoting what we do want and taxing what we don't want. And this is something more countries definitely can follow. And what Norway has done, anyone can really do.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you so much, Christina. Let's go to Geir Bjørli. You are CEO of Corvus Energy. What, from Corvus' perspective, have been the key learnings from Norway's early electrification in the maritime sector?
That has been definitely that the governments and local governments have created the market. It for us was starting with some different pilots, but the first really important pilot was the ferry Ampere, that the National Road Authority set out the competition to the ship owner to say who can offer the most environmental friendly solution, ending up with the first fully electric power battery. But also that the local government have used their purchasing power to create the market that made us and others possible to scale up.
Yeah, and that is interesting. What you're saying actually is that it's the local and regional governments that are pushing for scale, not necessarily the national government. So there's a lot of power at the local and regional level. Is that correct?
Yes, especially that Hordaland County in the past and Møre og Romsdal, they were brave. They went out and demanded the fully electric ferries, even if they didn't know if the central government in Oslo were willing to fund it. But they showed the way and have been able to be the front runner and been able to create this kind of industry locally. That it's not only the battery companies, but also for the integrators and the shipyards and the ship designers that have been instrumental for this journey.
Interesting. And was it always the intention of the regional government to think big and think scale, or did that come
No, I don't really not always know what the politicians are thinking, but I think they were looking for scale, and they also saw that they had very old ferries. I think the average age was close to 40, and they were polluting heavily. So I think that was their choice to move ahead and create a cleaner future.
Great, interesting. And so, yeah, you're telling the story of a regional and local government being really determined to push this ahead. It wasn't an easy journey, I think. And Christina, I know this is also a point that you make. You're saying that being a pioneer comes at a cost, but then there's also advantages. Can you reflect on that the pros and cons of pioneering?
Yeah, pioneering is always, in one way, it's difficult, but we really see that in Norway now, that we are paid back. Because all the learnings and understandings we have achieved the last few years with being at the forefront on electrification, it's now something we can use to create jobs. And one example is how car manufacturers from all over the world really are extremely interested in what's going on here. And for the last 5 or 10 years have been coming here to learn to see. And they're also launching their cars here first. So Norway is probably the country in the world with the highest variety of different EV models to buy. Yeah. And now, of course, the last almost 2 years, we've also getting Chinese electric cars on the road. So Norway's being used both by Norway itself, but also by international players as a testing ground for new technology. And we're looked upon as a country where it's important to be. It's also with our Nordic neighbors. They don't necessarily, for example, in Finland, they don't necessarily have a market to test their products completely. So they come to Norway and do it and learn here.
Great, interesting. So we're a testing area, and we have a lot of variety. That's I like that as a car consumer myself. But we also have variety in the maritime sector. And Pia Meling, you are Vice President Sales and Marketing at Massterly. Massterly is developing autonomous vessels. And first, to get us going on this theme, tell us, Pia, what is the link between electrification and autonomous vessels?
Yes, as mentioned by Corvus, the fleet for the ferries is already renewed to a large extent, but on the cargo vessels, that's not the case at all. And we are competing with really cheap trucks that are also polluting and stuck in traffic. So autonomy is a way of affording and propelling this moving the goods from road to sea, which we all want because that's much more environmentally friendly. So then the idea is to take off part of the crew or actually have an unmanned vessel for short voyages close to shore. And in this case, if you have a battery-propelled vessel, a 100% electric vessel, there's actually not a lot of moving parts in the engine room. So it's not a lot to do for the chief engineer sitting on board in the engine room. So actually that role can be performed from shore. So you can do the planned maintenance when the vessel is in port, and you actually don't need to be riding with the chief engineer on board. Also, if you can consider unmanned vessels, you can really design different types of vessels, right? That really opens up for more cargo carrying space. And the battery can go longer, or you could have a smaller battery because you go at ultra slow speed. There's no crew that needs to go for a crew change. You actually have no limitations on how you deploy the fleet. So you could go very, very slow, which is super eco-friendly, and you could then have a smaller battery. Makes it more affordable. So those are the most important links.
Great, and 2 follow-up questions for that. So one, just for the audience, you actually have, at the moment, you have 3 projects in Norway, if I'm correct, or 3 ferries?
3 vessels, So with 2 customers. It's interesting that in Norway now, it's actually the cargo owners that have been moving ahead of the rest of the market in testing and deploying autonomous vessels. So we have Yara, fertilizer producer. They have already constructed a container ship, Yara Birkeland. She's actually going to be in Oslo tomorrow to show off to a few guests. And she will be put into their container trade with fertilizer from their production to one port, Brevik. And then there's Asko, which is a big grocery distributor in Norway, the biggest one. They have 800 trucks on the road every day. And instead of driving those trucks from one side of the Oslo fjord to the other, around Oslo or through a tunnel that is closed many times a year, they're now building 2 vessels that can carry the trailer across, saving time and being part of their zero-emission logistics chain. So it's electric trucks, electric ferries or car ferries, roll-on, roll-off, whatever you like to call them. And then that's just increasing efficiency and reducing costs in their logistics. So those are those 3 vessels that will be sailing next year with a reduced crew, and then after extensive testing, unmanned from 2024-ish.
So in that, in the final project you talked about here, it's fully customer and market driven as opposed to actually a kind of public push towards this. Is that correct?
True. There has been funding from Enova for both these projects on the zero emission part, But these are private companies that are pushing this because they see that they want to have zero emission logistics and they want to control their own transportation. And of course, we've seen that in the disruption recently on the container market, for example, how difficult it can be to get goods shipped. So it's very interesting that those are the first movers, and they definitely see a clear operational advantage from doing this.
Interesting, a good point. And I think Massterly, I mean, we love Massterly at this panel. It gives us this interplay between digital innovation and electrification. And let's dig deeper into digital innovation and talk to Tomi Ristimäki. You are CEO at Kempower. And digital innovation is also key for Kempower. Tomi, your company is constantly innovating, and you foresee a battery charging infrastructure that will be continuously upgraded. And again, digitalization is a key part of this. Can you tell us more? How is digitalization a key part?
Yes, of course. So we have basically what you can see also on my background, this kind of a modular system that can charge multiple vehicles, even boats and cars from the same port. But we are gathering all the time, basically our cloud gathers data and we learn from the system. So it equals today, when I checked today, about 300,000 driving kilometers per day, the data what we are getting, and we are analyzing it also and looking at behavior in different charging points, how to locate chargers and how to design them and what kind of protocols are used and will the Japanese CHAdeMO die and will the CCS win and how things are doing and how users are doing. We are even looking at through digitalization how people use our let's say user interface, the touchpads, that we are following that if there are mispresses, then we are changing the places of the buttons, and this is basically the core of creating products that serve the customer's needs and are made actually from the user aspect.
Interesting, and let's explore that a bit further. So again, this kind of push or this emphasis on continuous innovation at Kempower, it's driven primarily by market considerations and customers. Is there a role for government as well in from a Finnish perspective? What's the interplay here?
Yeah, of course, the governments, we have something for the future project also with the Business Finland funded projects for the development. So we are also happy to receive some governmental support and now looking at some coalition process also through Innovation Norway. So that's a positive thing, and I hope those go through so that we can develop new things also with these funded projects with the Nordic states. So that's very interesting.
Great, and thereby also, of course, building Nordic collaboration and cooperation, which is good. Now, thank you, Tomi. Let's bring in Daniel Green. You're head of the Offshore Marine Center at Siemens Energy. And what we've heard so far from Pia and Tomi is that innovation and entrepreneurship are key parts of the Nordic battery story. But we also hear calls to think big. And Daniel, what is needed to scale up and create a large-scale battery industry in the Nordic region seen from a Siemens perspective?
Thanks for having me. I think it's a lot about these good ideas. And in Siemens, we have been working with good ideas for 160 years, but we have as well turned it into industry. And I think that's the way to go now. Both us and Corvus have shown that it's possible to make this and start to get a scale effect on this. But I think it's as well important that we cannot wait for sort of the next even more green thing. We need to see what's good enough, what meets the customer needs, and then make that into industry. Disruptive technologies, of course, it's an opportunity in one way, but it's as well seen as a threat when it comes to these large investments. Like we talked both, I don't know the investment for Corvus, but for us at least, we're talking about millions, hundreds of millions, and that goes for FREYR and Morrow and so on as well. So we need to see what meets the needs and then make industry out of it. Yeah, and so kind of being brave and going for it in a sense, that's your message. Yeah, because that's, and it has been brought up earlier as well, it's about economy of scale. We need to see how we can productify and make this producibility high. We have a lot of people here, maybe from the automotive industry. I mean, it's about automation, making use of robots, and then in order to get both the scale effect when it comes to cost efficiency, but as well when it comes to quality and safety of the products, because we need to bear in mind that in many cases it's persons that we are transporting as well.
Yeah, exactly. A good thing to keep in mind. And I hear your kind of a call for kind of thinking big and thinking scale, and that will be an advantage for the Nordics if we can take that step and scale up. But let's look.
Because I think that's a key thing, because as mentioned earlier, it's about trust, and I think we in the Nordics are too small to compete too much. We need to cooperate and collaborate in many areas, and I think that's the way to go for the Nordics to stay competitive.
Great, and let's put that in a kind of comparative perspective. So, and if we look beyond the Nordic region, so we also know, of course, that China is moving fast, and we see battery investments being made at a grand scale in Eastern Europe. Hungary is a key location now for battery investments. Again, China, the US, there are kind of grand plans as well in other areas. And would you say that the Nordic countries are sufficiently both innovative, and are we acting quickly enough to capitalize on our battery potential?
Siemens, of course, we are big. We are a bit slow, to be honest. But if we cooperate well with the companies that are a bit quicker than us, and then utilize the strength as well to make this automation and efficient, because I think the key thing for us as well is the competence and the autonomy of the people, and that is the key strength of the Nordics.
Yeah. Excellent. And one thing there. So one thing is cooperation, but what about more consolidation and having bigger Nordic players? Are we moving towards that?
I think that might be the way to go. If you look at the total value chain of energy, looking at both cell manufacturing and the tiers before that, I think there will be a consolidation in the years to come.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you so much. So I think we've had a nice round here. Let's have one further kind of comparative element before I ask you a few more questions on the drivers of innovation. And Christina, so we know Norway has kind of propelled ahead, and we see the whole Nordic region kind of pushing ahead with electrification. But which other regions should we kind of pay attention to, or which other countries are exciting, and where do we see exciting movements in other countries? And I'm using a question from our chat function here now.
There's a lot going on internationally when it comes to the uptake of electric cars, which I'm focused on the most. It's really interesting to see how the growth in, for example, in Germany, in Norway, going from 2% market share to 10% market share took 2.5 years. In Germany, it took 1.5. And in the UK, it took even in a shorter time. So it's picking up even quicker. And that's why I think all of us is a bit in a rush, because it's all happening now. This is very much a disruptive situation. We are going to have so much more batteries in the years to come, both in the vehicles, but also in many other sectors. So it's all about going for it now. And I think in Norway and the Nordics, where we're quite small in one sense, we have a big advantage, and that's making batteries as sustainable as possible. This is being pushed more and more from consumers, and the car manufacturers is increasingly also looking into this. So one of the first manufacturers that are really putting this on the table is Polestar, which is now completely open with the emissions in the whole value chain on producing the car and so on. So when this is getting more and more attention, the need for sustainable batteries will just grow. And that's a very good thing for Nordic battery factories.
Exactly, it's a key selling point on our part. Great. So we're nearing the end of this first panel, but I want to pick your brains on a few more issues. And if we return to Geir in Bergen, so when it comes to this idea of so we're an early mover. We know, and you highlighted the important role played by the government moving forward in the 2020s. Now that we're leaving this kind of early piloting, pioneering phase behind, and we're moving to scale, and we're moving into kind of clearly a global competitive race. What's the role of government in this? What do you want from governments in the Nordic?
No, first of all, we need to stop being the pilot country. We need to shape that we are scaling up and we are able to make industry out of this, because we have spending a lot of government money in pilots, and then we are not able to scale up. So I think that's one thing that the whole system for grants and stimulating the industry should be also on scaling, not only on pilots. And then I think it's for the government to continue creating a domestic market, so we can try out and innovate on different vessel segments. So as also Pia say on the cargo segments, doing the same thing that we've done on ferries, done on offshore vessel, continue on other vessel segments where we have a domestic market, and then we can be strong when we are exporting these vessels out, which we have done very successful. But really get into scale. Of course, we are in some way into scales. Corvus, we have delivered no more than 500 projects, so and all over the world. So we're getting there. But I think from all other part of this industry, we need to get into scale quicker. Or also otherwise the market is growing so fast abroad that we need also to understand that just growing at a normal Nordic pace is not good enough. The Chinese, the Koreans, the Japanese, they don't have the same limitation of thinking big as we have. So just make sure that we are scaling up big enough to take this part of the market. Otherwise, again, like we saw a little bit on LNG, we were pioneering, we were developing this and almost giving up when the market came internationally.
Thank you. And Pia, please follow up on that.
Yeah, I was thinking that we might be small in the Nordic region compared to Asia, but the advantage we could have is that we could do much better cross-industry and cross-silo collaboration. So one example is that in these ports where ASKO will operate, for example, it's going to be autonomous electric terminal tractors pulling the trailers on and off. There's going to be electric trucks coming in. Of course, it all needs to charge at the same charging station. But there's also a lot of digitalization and technology that is crossing over. So I know that Volvo has tested autonomous mining equipment. It could be similar to the autonomous equipment we need in ports. Mm-hmm. So that for us to really learn from each other, from across industry, and take the best that we have and apply it, of course, also in a port or a maritime environment. And that's, I think, a good advantage that could give us much more force in international competition. And also, of course, to have the sustainability, the Nordic stamp on the sustainability and quality, which I think we can manage.
Yeah, and keep kind of pushing that the sustainability element. But and then when you see the developments in the 2020s, again, and when you're calling for the Nordic collaboration and really using ideas and facilities from other sectors, is that something we can do kind of purely in a kind of market and commercial logic, or is there again a need for Nordic government collaboration or Nordic government initiatives there? What's the interplay there between?
I actually hope that the market forces now can move, because the government has started this, and that we can be smart in how we collaborate, and that maybe there is some consolidation as well, and we just don't sit and invent the same stuff over and over again in each little area. So it's challenging, but I really think that consolidation and collaboration will help the Nordic region to succeed in the international challenges that we see.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that's a nice way to wrap up this panel. I'm really excited to see the variations that you've highlighted, Christina, on our different the products in the EV markets, but also not just to see the ferries in our fjords soon, and even tomorrow, as you're saying, Pia, which is that's a global news for us. Okay, so thank you, Christina, Geir, Pia, Tomi, and Daniel for sharing your insights with us. Some of the key themes that surfaced in our discussion was the need to scale, and also directly or indirectly, it was efforts to build a sustainable industry and sustainable transport. Nora will now explore these themes with 3 battery cell producers that are precisely aiming for large-scale production. We will talk to Morrow, FREYR, and Beyonder shortly. First, though, allow us to show you a short video clip illustrating key features of the Norwegian battery industry.
Hi, and welcome back. And welcome Hege from FREYR, Kristin from Beyonder, and Paul from Morrow Batteries. You three represent the three most mature battery cell projects in Norway. We have named this session the Sustainability Sofa in order to have a friendly conversation around an important topic, sustainability. As we saw in the film, Norway has some advantages that all three projects reap the benefits of. Our renewable energy, our strong industry producing advanced materials, and our Nordic culture of work. But apart from that, each company works with sustainability in various ways. A few days back, we heard Northvolt announce that they have produced the first fully recycled battery cell. And FREYR, you recently announced that FREYR and Glencore have signed a supply contract for sustainable cobalt. So a lot of news this week, which is spot on for our little sustainability chat. But if we start with you, Hege, tell us a little bit about how FREYR work with sustainability.
Very happy to do so, and it's a really exciting times, Nora, because a lot of things are happening. So I'm sure that all three of us will talk a lot about many of the same things, as also been already mentioned by the minister. So let me maybe highlight something that is that we think is one step further, or maybe a little bit different for FREYR, and that is our technology. So FREYR has a business model where we are licensing technologies with other technology holders. And the one that we've chosen for our first factories in Mo i Rana in Norway is a technology called 24M, coming out of Boston. It's an MIT spin-off. And what is particularly interesting from a sustainability perspective of that technology is that it changes the production method of the same lithium-ion batteries, where we have basically comprised the whole process from 15 steps to 5, which means that, on top of being a faster process, it also means that we use almost half as much energy. So for the same energy, we can produce almost twice as much gigawatt hours, which is really important because energy is scarce and we want to make use of our renewable energy very, very well. It also means that and that of course takes down our carbon footprint as such. And then it also means that we do not use a chemical called a binder in the battery. And the binder is actually a chemical that is toxic, so that we don't have to deal with that in the process. And also when the batteries, both the waste through the process, but the batteries themselves later on will be recycled, we don't have that chemical to deal with. So that's a very big advantage. And then it takes much less space, so the biodiversity impact of that technology is quite heavily reduced. So these are things that through working with the technology and constantly improving the technology also has impact on sustainability. So that's one of the features that we are currently really working hard on and to scale and to see the benefits of.
Wow, sounds interesting, very impressive. Thank you. Kristin Skoftland from Beyonder, how do you work with securing sustainable value chain, and why is this important to you?
Hello. Yes. So for us in Beyonder, sustainability is really key. So that's starts with the mission that we have, and the mission is to sustainability and beyond. So you can start wondering, so what's this beyond? What could come after sustainability? So we focus on all parts of the value chain. So first of all, we have developed our own technology. So we really believe in technology as well. We develop for high power technology, and we have been doing that. So we have a product now, a high power battery without cobalt and nickel. The batteries has a very long lifetime, meaning less scrap, which is really important for the environment. And we also believe in embracing circular economy principles. So we have also now, we are not just the battery cell producer, we also look at the materials going in, and we have developed our own material that actually is the key why we are having very good performance of the batteries. And we are taking sawdust, which is residue material from the forestry industry, creating that into an active material that goes into the battery. and by that way doing it in a sustainable and circular manner. Also, of course, focusing on the recycling of all the materials that go in. With all of that, we put as a quite ambitious target that on CO2 we will have a negative footprint by 2030 in our production. And important to say, we are not just focusing on CO2, we also focus on reducing all sort of toxic materials and also the energy usage in the production. So technology, we are really believing in that. So we are looking at all ways of improving the processes, looking at the cells. They are now doing research on self-healing of cells. Can you imagine something so cool that actually are repairing themselves so they can last even longer? So all of those things are extremely important, and we are doing that all well, there's a drive in Beyonder to create a better world, and clearly there's good business into this as well. If we are succeeding, if we are able to do this, we see that there's a demand for sustainable produced batteries.
Thank you, Kristin. And now over to you, Paul. Welcome here. This week, the Norwegian Minister of Trade and Industry, who we saw earlier today, laid a foundation for your new Morrow Innovation Centre in Grimstad in southern Norway. How will you incorporate sustainability into your innovation projects?
Yeah, so thank you, Nora. First of all, I would say that sustainability is really a key driver for all our technology work and all our technology strategy, and it's been that from the beginning. In Morrow, we have this kind of dual aim. We want to create the most sustainable battery cells and the most cost-effective battery cells. And we think that this can go hand in hand. And what we are pursuing is technologies that could both reduce the cost and increase the sustainability of battery cells. And I think what we are focusing most on is material technologies. 70% of the costs in a battery cell, it's really the materials. 50% is the cathode materials. So we are pursuing technologies where we can replace and reduce some of these high-cost cathode materials with alternatives that have lower cost, are more abundant, and are more sustainable to extract, refine, manufacture. So that is really what we are looking into. And to give an example of what we are going to do in the Innovation Center in Grimstad is to develop and industrialize and commercialize this high manganese technology that we are working on, LNMO. So we are working with a Danish partner, Haldor Topsoe, a chemical company from Denmark, who have been working on this LNMO technology for more than a decade. Put it very simple, what we are doing there is basically to remove the cobalt, reduce the nickel, and replace that with manganese. And manganese is a much cheaper material than cobalt and nickel, so that will bring down the cost. But it will also bring some sustainability benefits to it. All of us know that cobalt, there are some problems with cobalt, the extraction of that, mining, etc. And then we can go away from cobalt in the battery cell, and we think that will be a major sustainability improvement. But it will also lower the carbon footprint, because these materials that we are using will have less carbon footprint related to the extraction and refining and manufacturing of the materials. So that is really, one example.
So continuing sort of around some of these maybe challenges around the theme around taxonomy, how do you view recent EU work around that? Kristin, did you have...
Yeah. So, of course, the taxonomy will challenge all of us. What is good with batteries is that it fits very nicely into the taxonomy as an enabling technology. So basically what we do, producing batteries, we are enabling electrification that will reduce CO2 footprint. So in that sense, we will, as battery cell producers, have a good score just by the production, the product that we are producing. Of course, if we are also doing that in an even more sustainable way, do no significant harm, making sure that we are doing it in an ethical, social sustainability, that we are really fulfilling all those compliance requirements. I think this industry is very well positioned now going forward in view of the new requirements that are coming.
Thank you, Christian. Hege, you wanted to comment?
Yes, I think it's important to remember basically that the product that we all are going to produce is maybe the key tool in the toolbox for the world, to decarbonize the global transportation sector, as well as, and not the least, which we haven't spoken so much about today, the global power sector. Yeah. Because the shift from fossil fuel based to renewable energy globally in terms of wind and solar is really only going to happen if you have battery solutions to help out. And so I think for the battery industry, the enormous growth in demand is because the world wants to decarbonize and will be decarbonizing. Technology is making it commercially available. And so that is really the biggest and profound impact that our industry will have on sustainability. And then governmental requirements is only helping drive that. We can see we are in a lot of conversations with customers now, which are clearly stating that they want to shift from battery producers that are coal-based today to renewable-based, like us in the Nordics. So an enormous opportunity for all of us. And there's room for even more of us because there's so much demand. And we see it from investors. We just listed on the New York Stock Exchange in July. And we can see that investors are very, very interested to be able to trade and invest. We are one of the few companies that you're actually able to invest in as a private investor. And there's enormous appetite for that because everybody can see that this is the way the regulations and customer demand is going.
Paul, anything to add here?
Yeah, I think we have this unique opportunity now in Europe, to build up this value chain from the scratch, more or less, because this enormous market is exploding at the moment, and I think we can do it in a sustainable manner. And I think that is, it's unique in this point in time that we have this opportunity. So I think that is, important.
I just want to say then for Norwegian governments or Nordic governments, I think at that point is really important. It is now. And it is scale and speed and sustainability that is really important. So getting our governmental frameworks up to speed and speeding up in terms of making processes much faster, being in that dialogue which I find that everybody wants to do, but then doing it is really, we can't think too much about it. We really have to do it.
No, that's excellent. And another aspect there's many competitive advantages with the Nordics, but social sustainability is also a Nordic value. Paul, how do you work with this in Morrow?
Yeah, I think it's very important when we are trying to attract talent from abroad, because there is a war of talent going on now in the battery industry. And let's face it, we haven't produced that many battery cells in Norway or in Europe, for that sake, so far. So we need to attract talent from other parts of the world to come and help us build this new industry. And I think in that sense, the quality of life we have in Norway and the social sustainability, if you want, I think that is very important for many of these individuals when they are considering where should we move. So I think we are seeing that. We are recruiting for Korea, China, India, all over the world, and one of the reasons why these very talented individuals would like to come and work with us is because Norway has this good brand in terms of quality of life. And if you want to build a family, raise your kids, Norway is a good country to do it.
I agree. Hege?
I think some of us are also seeing that we will transform some Nordic districts because the battery industry needs a lot of space to build the production. And so, both in Skellefteå, I think, we are, going into Vasa in Finland, we're in Mo i Rana in the north, at the Arctic Circle of Norway. Cities or regions will have an enormous transition to go through with a lot of new families from all over the world moving in. And so making sure that we manage those processes well is going to be very important.
Super. Christian, we have 10 seconds left. Any final words from Stavanger?
Yeah, this that we take as new companies that will take social responsibility, important work to create good workplaces, but also work with suppliers that we take sort of a broad perspective of this and see it as this is our responsibility. I think that's extremely important for our future success.
Yes, that's all from the sustainability sofa today. Thank you all, and keep up the excellent work. We are moving along the value chain now, and next up is recycling. Stina will be back shortly with yet another panel with new panelists. But first, a little teaser on how Norway is taking an important stance toward a true circular battery value chain.
Clearly, actors in the Nordic region are working hard to achieve both social sustainability, but also full circularity in the battery value chain. And this may turn out, or is already turning out, we heard from the SOFA talk, it's turning out to be a competitive advantage for the Nordic battery value chain. Let's explore this further in this final panel today, and we need to start with battery recycling. Elise Must, you are Head of Strategy and Sustainability at Hydro. So at the outset of this panel, set the stage a bit for us. Could you help us put recycling in perspective? How important is battery recycling relative to virgin materials?
So to reach climate targets, we have to produce more for less. The world really needs batteries to go full renewable. We see that in the soaring demand for batteries, but then we also see that there is a lot of materials and metals that are needed to fulfill this demand. According to the IEA, we have to actually multiply today's lithium production by more than 40 by 2040 in order to have enough. And that's a massive challenge if we think about the lead times to develop new mines. If we think about the environmental and social footprint often connected to the mining industry. So with that in mind, and also knowing that we can use these metals and minerals again and again, recycling is a key priority. At the same time, and I have to say that too, we have to look at, and we know that we have exponential growth. We know that the batteries that are put into ferries and cars today, it will take a while until they're ready to be recycled. So there simply isn't enough recycled material to produce all the batteries we need. I've seen some figures on that too. Obviously, a lot of uncertainty linked to such figures, but in 2040, maybe some 5 to 7% of the total lithium demand can be covered by recycled material, 6 to 8% of nickel and so forth. So yes, we have to recycle everything we can. At the same time, we do have to extract new minerals and metals. And then the crucial part is to do that in a responsible way, both from an environmental and social perspective.
Great, excellent. So we need both. But recycling is a key element, and Hydro is a very interesting player in this, given your history related to aluminium and also a great history of recycling of aluminium. Could you tell us a bit about Hydro's experiences and how that's relevant for the battery sector?
So our ambition is to create a sustainable and substantial battery business, and battery recycling is a key priority for us. Central to our strategy as well is to use our core competencies as an active industrial owner and go in and create values in the companies that we establish and invest in, because we see that there's a lot of transferable knowledge between industries. We've been in the aluminium industry for a very long time. We've delivered to the car industry and the automotive industry for decades. So we've given them the lightweight metal they need for their EVs, and we've been there at the end to recycle the car. Now we will make sure that also the battery is recycled. We are among the world leaders in aluminium recycling, and we will use a lot of that competence now that we enter into battery recycling. Together with Swedish Northvolt and our partner Batteriretur, we have established Hydrovolt. We're building the largest battery recycling facility in Europe, down in Fredrikstad. And there we use Northvolt's expertise within battery cell manufacturing. We use our expertise within recycling and Batteriretur's expertise within battery handling. And among other things, that makes us able to achieve recycling efficiency rates, which are important, that are somewhat 60% above regulation and current industry average. The ultimate goal is 95% recycling efficiency. We have to make sure we get out as much as we can of these valuable materials. And finally, I could also mention that we as owner, we are also an off-taker. So around 25% of a battery is aluminium. We will take that and deploy into new aluminium products.
Great, interesting. So you both really digging into the recycling sector, but also being a player really in the broader battery developments we see in the Nordics. So that's very interesting. But let's keep focusing on Hydrovolt, and we're very happy to have Fredrik Andresen. You're the CEO at Hydrovolt and Batteriretur. And as we just heard, Batteriretur together with Hydro and Northvolt, you have joined forces. And Hydrovolt, you see a major business opportunity in recycling. So tell us a bit, Fredrik, what's the status now with Hydrovolt in more detail, and what's the market prospects moving forward?
Yeah, okay. Thank you for having me. And yes, Stina, the status are really that we are starting the commissioning of the first facility this year. We are on track, even though it's been a busy year building a site more or less on teams. But as Elise mentioned as well, with the active owners and strong support from them, this has actually been a great journey so far. And we are on track, even though now it's all about safe execution and do this properly. But I have to admit, we are so super excited to turn key on this facility and of course get it up and running at its full capacity as soon as possible. Great.
And just pick up on one thing that was in the news this week with Northvolt and Revolt and their kind of breakthrough in producing batteries with recycled material. What's your perspective on that? And
that's the solution. That's the way it's going to be, and that's what we will contribute to from Hydrovolt as well, starting in Norway. I can just get in line to congratulate Northvolt on being able to do what they've done with the cell. And it's keep in mind a lot of what they've done there is also the part of what's being built here. So it's going to be a really exciting journey further on.
Great, exactly.
For the market prospect, though, it's growing quite substantially every year. But keep in mind, the most batteries coming back today comes from recalls and accidents, etc. So the end-of-life effect will come from the mid-20s and further on, and that's the famous hockey stick effect everybody's talked about. But actually, Europe can be the second biggest market in the world when it comes to battery recycling. So here there's a lot of opportunities, and it's super important that we all position the Nordics here and also Scandinavia together. So I really believe cross-border cooperation will be a very, very important task to achieve further on.
Thank you. And that is a nice cue to bring in Markus Martinsson. You are the business area manager for batteries at Stena. And we want to know from you, Markus, first, does Stena share Hydrovolt's market outlook? But also, I would also ask you a second question directly on on technical innovations. What technical innovation, or how does this need to be pushed further to trigger more circularity and bring about an even better sustainability performance in this circular battery value chain?
Thank you, and thank you for having me as well. Very exciting to be here today. I believe that regarding the market outlook, we have two significant waste streams. One is growing pretty rapidly, but from very low levels, and one will grow exponentially fast and following the establishment of cell production capacity. So we will have a lot of production scrap very fast, and we will have an exponentially growing waste stream of end-of-life batteries that has been used. In the short run, the production scrap will very much exceed and dwarf the end-of-life volumes. In the long run, there will be more of a balance. I do agree very much with what Fredrik said regarding the hockey stick effect on end-of-life batteries, and we can see it already starting now.
Yeah.
When it comes to the technology, I think from our side we are very humble in realizing that I guess I talk for most of the recycling industry. We so far lack industrial experience of recycling on a large scale. As Fredrik mentioned, the volumes are yet not there. And even though we begin to see the volumes, very few of us have long-term industrial experience of really fine-tuning our processes. And most of us, I know both our colleagues from Fortum and Hydrovolt has chosen a kind of a novel technology compared to the established battery recycling industry in Europe, and that goes for Stena as well. So I think we have not seen the final recycling technology on processes yet.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that will be a kind of key development to follow in the 20s. How the technology side will evolve. But you've also noted the issue of access to large volumes. You're saying that's going to be a key. The key to success is actually to have access to large volumes of recycled material. And as of today, are volumes sufficiently available in Europe? What's our challenges when it comes to volumes?
Well, the volumes will somehow show up. That's for sure, because we are putting a lot of batteries on the market. What is interesting to see is that there is a proposal for new battery regulation coming up. And the effects of, and the ambition in that legislation is very exciting. It kind of doesn't care if it's waste or if it's a product. It's kind of trying to make a circular legislation out of it, which is very exciting and a bit of a novel approach, I would say. As I mentioned, we need industrial experience, and industrial experience is driven by industrial volumes. I do believe, however, by looking in the mirror and looking at the mature legislative regulations that are out there. So if we take a look at the electronic waste legislation, the WEEE directive, it's a mature and well-regulated legislative framework, which has a penetration of 30%. So 70% of everything electronical put on the market in the European Union ends up in non-regulated recycling systems. And then if we take a look at the portable battery or the old battery regulation, we have I think the hit rate penetration is something like 40%, but if you look at the portable lithium-ion batteries, it's something like 15% on a European level. It's much better in the Nordics and the Scandinavian countries, but still. And if you take a look at the end-of-life vehicle directive, every second car approximately in the European Union is not recycled in the established recycling systems. So, and this boils back to one thing. It will depend on the enforcement from the authorities regarding the new battery legislation. And without an enforcement, a stronger enforcement that what we have seen so far, I believe we can expect significantly lower volumes. But with a stronger legislation, we can have more and bigger volumes, which is the enabler for industrial value chains.
That's a really interesting point, Marcus. And I think, so what you're saying, if we are able to really implement the EU regulations throughout the European market, that will actually constitute an advantage and build kind of security of supply to the growing recycling industry that we have in the Nordics and in Europe. So I think that is a really interesting element, and I think it's also an interesting message, I think, from the battery industry to national governments and to Nordic governments as well, that this is something that can really be promoted and built. And Fredrik, if I can call on you on this one again. So Batteriretur, you've exactly been that actor that has facilitated, or you've really generated the volumes that we have in Norway. And again, are there any lessons for other European countries in the east, in the south? What can we learn from Batteriretur specifically?
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons to learn here, and as Marcus is touching base on, it's legislative terms as well. Not only for the environmental perspective, but also for the logistics perspective here. You look at packaging, ADR regulation. So the last 10 years, the last decade, we spent on kind of developing the system here in Norway for a controlled downstream. And of course, lessons learned from Norway was going to bring that into Europe. I actually tried to motivate Norwegian authorities to implement the regulation even sooner, the elements in the regulation even sooner than what the European Union is doing, because I fully believe this will be a competitive advantage for us here in Europe as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for that. And we now need to bring in our fourth speaker, Jaakko Savolainen. You are Commercial Director of Business Line Batteries at Fortum. And as we know, Fortum is engaged across the battery value chain throughout the Nordic region. And in this conversation, we focus on your recycling activity. And we've had the issue of speed and scale coming really throughout this webinar this morning. And when it comes to battery recycling from a kind of Fortum perspective, is the Nordic region particularly well placed to deliver speed and economy of scale for battery recycling, would you say?
Yeah, I think we are, and our regulation is really supporting us as well in here. The Nordics try to have a level playing field between all the Nordic countries. So kind of we are playing with the same rules, and when we're looking at for example now Batteriretur and Stena, so pretty much our strategies are in line as well, and we have a good cooperation possibilities here in the Nordic countries between us, and that's really key on when we are starting to look at the recycling. But when we are going further on the value chain and refining the recycled materials and then selling them onwards to the battery producers, which we are currently doing on the nickel and cobalt. So that's really key that we are close to the raw material sources and close to the battery producers. And when we are looking at the Nordic countries, so there's mining happening on the graphite, lithium, nickel and cobalt side, which are the most important metals in the batteries, and there's cell projects coming, PCAM and CAM production projects coming. So we are really well positioned here, of course, to recycle the Nordic volumes of batteries, but also take waste streams from other countries to be further refined here in the Nordic countries.
Yeah. Thank you. And several of the speakers have mentioned the EU battery regulation. Let's have a few questions on that to several of you. But first, Jaakko, to you. So in the battery proposal that we have, there will be one key part is mandatory levels for recycled content used in new batteries. And what is Fortum's perspectives on these targets? Do you see Nordic actors needing to aim even higher than the signal targets that we have so far from Brussels?
I think the proposal came in last December, and we are fully supporting ambitious targets on the recycled content in the new batteries. But let's see how it goes. It seems that our customers, the battery cell producers, are even looking putting higher targets themselves. So I think it might happen here that the kind of legislation is coming a little bit from behind here, that even our customers want to have more than the legislation is requiring. And the demand comes also, of course, from the consumers which are using the EVs. So they want to understand that the batteries are made out of sustainable raw materials, and the recycled raw materials is the most sustainable raw material.
Yeah. Good, and here I'm using my kind of research and academic background more to kind of to tweak on that question. So is it, and would you, from an industry perspective, is it preferable to have what you then call quite moderate ambitions kind of embedded into the regulation? Or would you want the regulation to kind of be even more ambitious so that it kind of matches what we want in the Nordics? Or would you want to, is it more comfortable to have a moderate ambition, and then the pioneers could kind of push ahead? What's the ideal situation there?
Well, I think the ideal situation is to have a level playing field, and in the Nordics we are on a level playing field. But when you're going more south and to the other European Union countries, even where we have a lot of competitors which are not playing with the same rules, so I think that is the most important thing, to have the same rules to apply for everybody. And yeah, I see that it's more important to keep the raw materials here in Europe, and especially in the Nordics, to not let them slip out.
Good. I won't let the regulation theme go yet with you, Elise. So the status now with the EU regulation that you several have mentioned. So what we know, and I have this from my colleague Therese Birkeland, it seems that the developments in Brussels are taking us to the battery regulation being implemented or being put into force already in early 2022. So we have the kind of the framework for the regulation is kind of put into force, but then we have a period of several years where we have secondary legislation where the details really will be worked out, kind of for several years. And Elise, you also follow this really closely. So what's the kind of the remaining issues from a kind of Nordic perspective in this secondary phase? What do we need to kind of look out for, or is there a particular Nordic message that needs to kind of come in this secondary phase?
First and foremost, I would like to say that we really support the battery regulation. It's important, and it's important that it's being implemented as soon as possible and that it's being followed up, as we've already heard. Yeah. There's a lot of work remaining in the details, and the devil is really in the details here. How to calculate carbon footprint, for instance. Yeah. Where and sort of what will be the rules for what is included and what is not included? How can we do this? So that's a crucial thing for us in the Nordics, I think, to pay attention to, so that our competitive advantages in terms of clean energy is really also reflected in the way that these carbon footprints in the end are calculated. Also, when it comes to recycling targets and so forth, we have to make sure that these are being now fully implemented and followed up.
Yeah, interesting. And what's your outlook on the carbon footprint? Are you optimistic? What's your kind of sense in how Brussels is
in terms
moving
of
there?
Well, they're hard to read, but I am optimistic because I think the whole sort of the objective behind the regulation is so strong. They really want to have a circular, sustainable battery value chain. So in that sense, I'm really optimistic. But then again, we need to be there. We need to come across with our messages, and we need to work. It's not over yet. I'd also like to mention on the social and environmental side, there are now. So we will see that due diligence will become mandatory. But then we need to make sure that there are good systems to do this and good certification processes and sort of aligned systems on how to do this. And that's also something that we from the Nordics need to follow up closely on.
Interesting. So it's manageable and also meaningful in a sense, right? For this to put forward. And I like what you're saying on the CO2 footprint, and that what we want to, or what's going to happen is that eventually in the late 2020s there will be limits to CO2 emissions for battery production. And as you're saying, I think it's quite interesting that this, in a sense, it's a testing point almost of the European Green Deal and the larger goals, really. I mean, if there is a viable and strict calculation methods put in place, we are seeing that the European Green Deal is really kind of pushing forward and being delivered on, in a sense, right? Good. So that's one element of the battery regulation on the CO2 footprint. We've talked about recycled content. We need to have one question on the battery passport, and because then that takes us back into digital innovation as well. And Fredrik, I've asked you this before, but I want to ask you one more time in this webinar on the battery passport. Could you tell us a bit about the status there? What is the battery passport, and how is that kind of agenda moving forward?
Well, it's as you know, each cell and each battery, each module will have its individual ID, and it needs to be documented somehow. So traceability is the key here, of course. And from our side, we are enabling a system for all QR code settings, etc. For all the batteries in our chain. I truly believe this is the right way to go, the right path to follow, because it will, as the intro also showed, batteries not only work in EVs or ferries, it will also go into second life applications. That it's really important to keep traceability of the material as well. And as Jakob was mentioning, we need to keep the material in Europe and also in the Nordics. And to have this traceability system in place there will, of course, ensure that we can see, okay, what's the leakage to markets outside Europe? What is not coming back? So overall, it's, I really emphasize to implement it as soon as possible.
Good. And are you hopeful on the types of technological solutions that are being put forward to actually give us this traceability? Are we optimistic on that outlook? Will there be good mechanisms, you think?
I think it will be. I think it will take some time though, because you need a cell producer really to engage in this as well. So this is to be defined in more detail, of course. But from those who I discuss with, they put in place good systems for this. And I think we need one system, not 10 different systems. So that's really important.
Yeah, exactly. And interesting. And and I think I also like the fact that you highlight this kind of traceability and the battery passport, that it's both giving us more security of supply and addressing really what you said, Marcus, on we need to have volumes, we need to avoid leakage, and we need to actually get to the battery waste that we actually have in Europe. And you really use that as our gold mine, so to speak. So thank you for that. And with that, I want to thank the panelists here in this second panel for your illuminating insights. We have a few additional questions that have been put forward to us. Let us now address some of these. Elise will stay with us, and Nora, and you will join us now in the final round and give us the first question, Nora.
Yeah, thank you, Stina. Thank you, Elise, and everyone online. And we're also welcoming back. We're so excited that we have people live here today. So we just wanted everyone to come back on stage. So Christina, Paul, and Pia, welcome again. We have some questions from our audience. So the first one goes to Morrow. How do you prepare for a scaled production that meets the demand in Europe quickly enough? And how important are international partnerships for you in this regard?
Yeah, I think international partnerships are crucial for us because, this is a quite complicated task to build this battery gigafactory from the scratch. So we are working very closely with large players such as Siemens, ABB. We are working on the material side with the Korean company called POSCO, and we are working with Elkem here in Norway. So that is, of course, very, very important. The first part of your question, how do we get up to a scaled production? So our plans are basically that we are going to deliver our first A samples by next summer. So we are building up this industrialization infrastructure now, building the Innovation Center in Grimstad. We are building a pilot cell factory in Arendal, which will be up and running from first quarter of 2023. And then we have this access to approximately 1 square kilometers in Arendal, which we are building out module by module. So we will have the first gigafactory module up and running in 2025. So we have quite a very ambitious, but it's also possible because of these partnerships that you mentioned.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Then we have a question for Pia. It's very similar to, I think, what Christina was asked earlier, but you know, Norway, we talked about, we have a full ecosystem for the maritime value chain. What other countries are both large maritime countries and far ahead?
Well, within the autonomy space where we are mostly focusing, we see that the Netherlands is very much forward-leaning. Sweden and Denmark, of course, in addition to Norway and Finland. But also in Asia, Korea is putting a lot of money into this development of emission-free and autonomous vessels, and China. There's a lot of interest from all over the world, also in Japan or in the US for that sake. But I think Korea and China probably are the areas where we see the most of efforts and potential competition arising from, and the Netherlands actually.
Yeah. Do we have more from the audience, or?
Yes, it was more of maybe because this section was about recycling. You know, the volumes are in China. How should we both compete with and learn from China?
Yeah.
So, question. Anyone, Lisa?
Well, I think in terms of competing with China, I'd like to turn it a bit around, because when we look at this enormous industry that we need to build and the enormous demand that we need to actually deliver to, all actors are needed here. So let's just get in there and do it. And we all have a role to play. I heard also Siemens earlier today mention that we need partners. We need the quick actors. We need those industrial companies with hundreds of years of experience. We need all the supply chain. So I think here there is room for everyone. We need a regulation, and then we need to deliver to our customers as well.
Yeah. Can we follow up with that to Paul as well? So again, with the Chinese investments, I mean, we have both US investments. There's a bit of Tesla or quite a lot of Tesla investments in Germany, and you have Chinese investments primarily in Eastern Europe. Again, from a kind of Morrow perspective, and the establishment of gigafactories elsewhere. Again, is that unproblematic? Is it a very tough competitor? How do you see that Chinese competition?
I think we believe that the demand is higher than the supply at the moment, so there is a supply deficit, basically. What we can learn from China, I think we can learn speed is something we can learn from China, you know, because they are very good at building this industry very quickly. It's not that long time ago since China started to build this industry. In fact, it was originally dominated by Korean and Japanese companies. But they have been able to become the #1 leader in quite, not that many number of years.
Yeah.
So I think speed is something we can learn from them.
Yeah, and you're hopeful that will happen. I mean, we are actually on that speed. At
I think that
you
is.
Are.
I think we are at. We were discussing with a potential candidate, and they said that we were maybe even quicker with our timeline. So I think that is a compliment.
Yeah, that is a compliment. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, good. Christina, you come from, you know, you're in a different part of the value chain here. How do you see, I mean, you work closely with the Chinese OEMs. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I find that the Chinese are eager to collaborate and learn, also because Europe and the Nordics is a new market. It's different culturally. So in my opinion, it's a lot of interest and also an interest in collaborating. So that's also a possibility, I think, to collaborate with Chinese players also when it comes to, and I mean, we probably need to, in a way, to get the expertise that we need in at least the first years, because we still don't have enough people with enough battery skills in Norway, although we really need to focus on that, obviously, when it comes to the universities and get the programs up, which is starting to happen in Agder University, for example.
We do, yeah. I have a follow-up question. But,
go ahead.
So this, again, both to Pia and Christina. So just to address this issue of we have the pioneering maritime sector and we have the pioneering electric vehicle sector. Could we talk a bit more about how the learnings between those sectors may happen, and how important was it for the maritime sector that you had the car sector having kind of pushed ahead before? tell us a bit about that kind of cross-sector.
I think it's very important for the kind of public acceptance on using batteries that everybody is driving an electric car. Everybody.
Yeah.
So it's easier to conceive that you could use it in other applications as well. Of course, there's competence as well that could be used across. And as I told you when we talked up front, that there's also a link there, for example, for ASKO again, that are investing in more expensive trucks because they're fully electric. That's more expensive than the diesel engine. They want those trucks to be on the road as much as possible doing useful work, not waiting in line, not sitting in traffic, not sitting with the driver on board the ferry. That's why they also built these autonomous vessels to carry the trailer, not the driver, not the steering wheel. No people on board, to optimize the OPEX actually, and to make sure that they really get the benefit out of this more expensive asset. So it's a good link between EVs, trucks especially, and of course, as I mentioned, I'm really interested in the mining industry and various technologies that could be applied in the port side, because we really need disruption also in the ports. It's not enough if the vessel is efficient and zero emission if the port is polluting and it's not efficient. So I think again the crossover is very interesting.
Perfect, and I think you addressed the whole battery value chain in your answer there.
Probably,
and highlighting digital innovation. So I think that's a nice wrap.
Yeah, I think that's all for today. Thank you all for joining our third webinar in the Nordic Battery Thursday series. I think it's safe to say there's no boring day working in the battery ecosystem. And I'm excited about our upcoming fourth and final webinar where Inner Energy and European Battery Alliance are in lead. We will be discussing the Nordics in the context of European regulations as well as in global contexts of cooperation, trade and investment. So that's on December 9th. And if you're signed up with this event, you'll get a reminder in due course. I also wanted to close up and add that the conversations will not end after our fourth webinar and not after today either. The commitment to Nordic collaboration is even stronger. And during 2022, we aim for more arenas of knowledge sharing and networking. One event is the International Electric Vehicle Synopsium, taking place in Oslo in June 2022, where the ambition is to welcome the whole world to the EV capital of Oslo. So again, thank you to our guests, our partners for making today happen, and to you for watching. See you on December 9th.